with rumors circulating that the asking price of Nikola Vucevic is a first-round pick, one that not a lot of teams are willing to match as of right now, and that the trade market for Zach Lavine hasn't really increased very much. We need to talk about the fact that the Bulls could be stuck with Nikola Vucevic and Zach Lavine for the foreseeable future, and while that's not necessarily bad for either party. We're going to talk about that, plus dive into the mailbag, all that and more, right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Sarah Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And so, we dropped an episode yesterday when it came out from Mark Stein. The Chicago Bulls asking price right now for Nikola Vucevic is a first-round pick. Now, there were some Bulls fans that agree with that, especially with the season that he's having. There's been some that disagree with that, especially after the Dennis Schroeder trade, and they're looking at it as maybe the Bulls are asking a little bit too much. And here's my thought process on that is you don't have to move Nikola Vucevic right now. You don't. And because of that, you have the right to ask your price. And so I know that, Bulls fans look at this thing like, well, we got to move these guys because we got to keep our top 10 pick. And you guys know my thought process is the Bulls aren't going to necessarily have too hard of a time to keep their top 10 pick. You still get some Bulls fans that I see in the comments like the Bulls can be the 4th or 5th seed. I'm like, what team are you watching? And I would bet on this team being a bottom 10 team more than being in the top 10. That's just how I would view it as the season goes on with how bad this defense has consistently been this season. Now, with that said, of course, you can still stay in the top 10, the bottom 10, right, and stay in the top 10 of draft odds, and the Bulls could still miss out on their top 10 pick, which is leading to why there's so much anxiety and thought process between the Bulls needing to find a trade destination for one, if not both of Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic to strengthen that case to keep their pick. But like I said, there are other ways to skin a cat, and I think when you look at it as well, yes, you would have to look at how it's going to even out. There are teams still, outside the play-in tournament right now in Detroit and in Philly that could still, at some point, those teams could wake up if they can ever stay healthy. But then you don't really want to bet on that either. And so I think that, and I said it on yesterday's episode, is that with the trade market being what it's looked like it's being, and this is all speculative right now, right, is that it could lead the Bulls front office to do something that I would think is kind of drastic, and that is maybe move one of Io and Kobe instead of Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic. And, if that happens, that does, it takes, 2 young players off the board or one of 2 young players off the board. But then when you look at the Zach Lavine piece in it, Zach Lavine, it's still that contract. Like Zach Lavine's production is the production, right? He's one of the best scorers in the league when he's healthy, and he's been healthy for the majority of the season. When he's missed 2 games, I think, this season. But he's been healthy, right? And he's given more effort defensively, even though it's not quite what it was at the start of the season. But, it is what it is there. But it's the contract. And that's one thing that is just not going to go away. And it very well could be that the Bulls have to wait till another year's off that contract to make it more palatable for opposing teams. And so that's something that plays into it as well. But here's the thing that I'm going to say. It could, and I'm not saying for sure that it will, but the Bulls being stuck with Zach and Vooch could honestly not be as bad as what people think. Now, yes, the team would have to continue being bad, but you guys know my mindset, right? And I think the difference in thought process between a lot of Bulls fans is a lot of Bulls fans look at a full rebuild, meaning that you got to trade everything off, and we're just that top 10 pick is going to trade it. Like, I look at this and saying that if the Bulls are as bad as what it looks like they can be, right, and they end up keeping the top 10 pick, but you're adding an Asa Newell, because at that point I don't think you're in the Cooper Flags and the Ace Bailey sweepstakes, the Dennis Harpers. I don't think you're really at that level is bad. But if you pick anywhere between, let's just say, 7 and 10, there's still a lot of players that you can add that still help this team drastically, which I've talked about, covered a little bit about. We'll get into a little bit deeper detail on it as, of course, we get closer to the end of the season. And but you then adding that young player to a team that has a foundation, right? And then you have your players coming in. And the thing is, you got to keep in mind, like, we've seen it happen before. Like, the Warriors still had Monta Ellis when they drafted Steph, right? They still had Monta Ellis there. The Wizards still had Gilbert Arenas. Now, he had a very different situation when they got John Wall, right? So you still, when you're able to draft, technically, when the The Pelicans got the number 1 overall pick that it turned into Zion. They still had AD, right? They ended up moving him. But if you're able to add a top pick and you get the right guy to it, like, you can still move off of guys later down the road and they can help you. If you're able to add a player that then you draft and develop, you can move off of these contracts later. And it actually makes it to where you actually have more negotiating power because you don't necessarily have to move off of them. So if the Bulls were to keep their top 10 pick, they get Vooch, they get Zach. You then have a half of a year as far as Vooch if you want to move him at the trade deadline, because then teams could be looking to acquire his bird rights or whatever else happens there. So it's not the end of the world. And listen, I get it why everybody has the mindset. And I'm not saying that this thing is gonna necessarily turn out that way, right? But also you're still trying to develop young players in Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Modest Vucevic. And when you have guys like a Zach, like a Vooch, and Vooch especially with his passing, and we've seen, like I showed the shot chart at times when Vooch is going on, how we really use Vooch as that pivot point where the assists are all kind of come from, like the pass before the pass and things like that. Like, it really does help the ball movement. It really does help a lot. Now, of course, you do run the risk, and there are risks involved in you having Zach and Vooch for another year. What if Zach does have another major injury? What if Vooch, in his age of 34, 35 years old, ends up starting to fall off, right? And then that gets your value. But Vooch especially, it's like, I get it. I completely understand wanting to strike while the value is high, right? But he's an expiring contract in the next year. And if you can't move him, it's not like you have long-term money attached to him. At that point, maybe you can even still try to get a sign and trade, even if he does hit restricted free agent. The Zach Lavine part of it is that as Zach Lavine gets less money on the deal, he actually may become a little bit more desirable on that trademark. I say maybe, right? And so the Bulls, it's not as straight. I get it. We are trained as fans to look at things in one way and what's the quickest and easiest path to get to that way that we view it. But that's not always the way that it works out, per se, right? And so it's up to the Bulls. And again, trusting this front office again to get some things right is already a scary enough prospect when it comes down to that as well. And I understand all that. But I think you right now that the Bulls are at a place where I don't think you can continue to sell off assets for penny on the dollar. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, Hayes, can you afford to let them walk for nothing? It depends on what you're getting out of it. And right now you are getting things out of Vooch that help young players develop. Right now, with Zach Lavine playing this role where he's fine being a complementary piece and then stepping in when he needs to, that's also something that's helping your young players. Now, you still got things that you need to figure out, the Josh Giddey, Kobe White balance, Ayo Dosunmu being better as a starter than coming off the bench, and eventually you would think he's going to eventually move back to the bench. Modest Vucevic, I think either way, Modest is good. He's going to have a point guard that's able to distribute to him. Julian and Dalen, right? Like, these guys have shown some flashes this season. So it just comes down to not everything is going to go the way that we hope for as fans. And it's up to the front office to find a way to pivot from that and to still find a way to be, to make it make sense, right? And, I get it that one of the worst case scenarios is a reality for this team. I don't think it's a high reality, but it is still a reality nonetheless that this team could compete for a play-in spot, end up either not making the play-in or getting eliminated after a game or so in the play-in, and then you still don't have a pick to show for it. And so we got some voicemails on there where we'll get into that in a little bit more depth. But the Bulls being in the middle, and make no mistake about it, is bad. But I guarantee you this. If the Bulls were to trade off these assets for pennies on the dollar just to maintain their top 10 pick, and keep in mind, it's not necessarily like the Bulls are bottoming out to be one of the worst two teams to really get a real chance at that first round pick. Now, is lottery luck a thing? Yeah, lottery luck is a thing. Make no mistake about it. But I think when it comes down to it, like, as well, like, I get it. I get the anxiety. I get the frustration. I get the overall look. And I even understand the fans that look at this and say, hey, I want to keep this thing together so we can start winning some basketball games in here. I don't think we have the roster to win the basketball games that some of the fans want us to win, but I understand the mindset there. And the clarity is going to come. And one way or another, like I said, it's not always going to be that you can get what you think that you wanted to get or the value there. It's about just figuring it the hell out. And we'll see what happens there. This Bulls team sits in a place where a pivot point is needed at some point. And hope that sometimes you can choose that pivot point, and other times that pivot point is chosen for you based off the circumstances that you find your roster and your franchise in. You got to have a partner to make a deal. And, unfortunately, with the Bulls making some bad deals over the last few years, I do think that that teams are kind of waiting out to see if the Bulls are going to get desperate and make a bad move again. And if they do, fans are going to riot. So, we'll see what happens with that one. But I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on that. You guys can let me know how you feel down below. If the Bulls end up being stuck with Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic, do you find that as the worst case scenario, or do you look at that and saying, hey, we still can do some things? Let me know what you guys think on that down below. All right, next up, we're going to get into the voicemail bag, man. This first voicemail, this one's from Jay.
What's good, Hayes? This is Jay, Jay Maurice. This is my third time calling. Last time I called was over the summer with a slightly controversial topic about trading Kobe White at the peak of his value and then using the assets to trade up in the 2025 draft next summer. It was controversial then, though it seems like a few more people have kind of come around to the idea. Interestingly enough, I no longer think it's a good idea at this time because I'm convinced every person on the Bulls roster would be undervalued, which leads me to why I'm calling today on another, a little more controversial topic, and that is Bulls are better off standing pat and doing nothing, letting contracts play out, than making a desperate trade to get off our players for our picks. Last year, we traded Alex Caruso. Reportedly, teams offered as many as 2 firsts for Caruso. After the trade, front office sources from Knicks, Kings, and others said that we received an unusually low return for him. Now, when AK gave his response as to why we traded someone worth 2 firsts for a guy OKC was actively trying to get rid of and likely prepared to trade away for a second or two, AK's response was, point guards like him don't come around often. Very stupid, but let's move on. What other officers heard when we said that was we got desperate for this guy, so we gave up a haul for him. Now, never mind the fact that we effectively gave up 2 firsts for a guy we weren't even sure we'd re-sign. Pelicans have been trying to get rid of Brandon Ingram for a full year for 1 first, and teams aren't budging because they don't know if they want to give up 1 first for a guy they wouldn't be sure they'd re-sign. Meanwhile, we gave up a guy worth 2 firsts for a guy we weren't sure we'd re-sign. But again, super stupid. Let's move on. Teams heard that explanation and they thought we made a stupid deal because we got desperate. I believe the contract and injury talk around Zach was all cap because his trade value plummeted immediately after that trade went through. Teams were still interested in him at a first-round pick cost until we signaled we'll do some stupid shit when we're desperate. Now teams believe we're desperate to keep our pick, and they're willing to wait until we get desperate enough to give away all-star caliber players that will help them win championships for no picks or at best 1 second. It's the Bulls' responsibility to show the market that the desperate Caruso trade was a fluke, and we do that by standing pat if we need to. If we sell low on our potential all-stars, teams will be lowballing us with trade offers for the next decade. I want our 2025 pick too, just like we all want it, but we got to stand strong. Love to hear what you think. Talk soon. Peace.
Bulls players undervalued on the market. I completely agree with you. Now, I disagree with you saying we gave up a haul for Giddey. I'm sorry. Like, Alex Caruso is great. Make no mistake about it. But as an expiring contract for a player that, wanted to compete and what you kind of heard from him, he wanted to win, you probably weren't going to keep him. I don't look at that as a haul. Now, should they have gotten a better deal for him? Yes. But a haul? No. And even in the thing that teams are offered 2 first-round picks, you got to keep in mind, like, where would those first-round picks have been at? Because, yeah, one said that the pick eventually ended up in the lottery, but it wouldn't have been in the lottery had they got Alex Caruso. And so even in last year's draft, and that's the specific framing that we need to lose, I know that Josh Giddey's not been what some fans thought he could be up until the season, but he's still better than a lot of the players that went at the end of the first round in a weaker draft. So I can understand why the Bulls wanted to go kind of more a thing of a player that they saw what he could do at the NBA level and still be as young. He's still as young as some of the picks that were drafted there. Now, is it working out as of right now? Not really. Now that could be a mix between the roster construction and other things, but I don't really call that a haul. I just disagree with that wording there. Now, as far as teams offering a first-round pick for Lavine, I don't know where you got that. The last reports that we heard is that most of the offers, the Bulls would have had to give up a pick to facilitate a Lavine trade. So that really wasn't a thing either, where the Bulls were getting a first back. They were looking for one. That's what the report that they were looking for. But part of the reason they didn't move off of Lavine is because that they had to give up picks to facilitate a Lavine deal, and that is just not the place that the Bulls were in either. So I get it what you're saying in standing strong, but standing strong in this case would potentially mean the Chicago Bulls just being in the middle of the pack for the next 3 years with no real room for improvement via getting more young players in here. We're never going to be a real free agent destination. We never have been, even at the height of our powers. I think that thing plays a role into it as well. So, we'll see what happens there. I mean, listen, I get what you're saying as far as holding on to pieces. And, I was never in the trade Kobe White bandwagon anyway. But I think ultimately, like, the Bulls got to decide what they're going to do. And a pivot is coming at some point. Like I said, pivot may not come at this trade deadline, but it got to come at some point, or it's just they're going to ride it out and let it expire, as you said, and then we're just going to be talking about the same thing for the next 3 years, and that's the Bulls being in the middle of the pack. They may make a play in that time. They may miss a play in at that time. I think one of the things also to look at there is that if the Bulls do send their pick to San Antonio in this draft, while this is a deep draft and it would suck to do that, that would eliminate, then at that point they own all their first-round picks for the foreseeable future. So if they were to get bad, if they were to have a down season, they would keep their pick. So, that's that part to look into it as well. All right, let's get into the next voicemail, man. This one's from Corn.
What it don't do, King Drip, it's yo brother Corn. Man, let's get right into it like we always do. Hey, man, this is, again, about the trade talk. Vooch and Zach, of course. I want to talk about where they can go. I can see the value. And it's been the same talk with last year. It's the same shit. It's like, is we value them too high? Just because we value them too high, is you go sell them too low. Regardless of that, I know one thing. I just wanted to get done with it already. Yes, I am team trade, team let's keep this goddamn pick all day long. But besides that, I see Vooch, and it's going to be weird to say, I agree with Shay. I see him with one of those teams that he said I could see him with Golden State. That's a really, really good fit. I don't know what picks would they have. I would defer to you with that. Another team nobody's really thinking about, I'm gonna bring up, is the Houston Rockets. Who, again, I don't know, but I think that would be a good fit. One more team that got a shitload of picks, and we already traded one of our access, so some of us Bulls fans might have PTSD from me bringing this up. I could see Boots going to OKC with Chet and Harnstein, and he'll be a perfect fit rotation-wise over there with those guys. Zach Lavine. I got two places for Zach, man. And it's, LA, man. It's LA. I know that's where he want to go. But the dark horse I do want to bring up. What about Denver? I could see Zach in Denver. I really can. Michael Porter is being inconsistent. Jamal Murray is not having the Jamal Murray year that we used to seeing him having. But, he usually get ready for the playoffs. But what do you think, man? What do you think? Do you got any other teams in mind that are better fits for them? But you already know, King Drip, man. Love you, big bro. Appreciate you. All right, see you, Red Nation. Blessings.
Making trades to solidify keeping the pick. I get it, and I understand what that's rooted in. But like I said, it just may not be there. You got to have partners to do the deal. And I don't think that, and I'm sorry, I know this is going to be controversial, that it's not worth selling off pieces that actually could be part of your future just to keep a top 10 pick in this. Now, if we had a better front office, then I would say that if we had a front office that just hit on draft picks, that just, they always find a way to get value out of draft picks, I would probably have a different mindset as well on that. But I think when it comes down to it, not the distrust from this front office to get the right deal done regardless is kind of a thing that's overlooking there. Now, as far as your dark horse, OKC has no need for Vooch. With Isaiah Hartenstein and when Chet's healthy, they have no need for Vooch. That doesn't even remotely fit at all with what they're doing there. At all. I would think a player like Jalen Smith may be better there, but Vooch, nah. Vooch doesn't fit what OKC has going on. And Houston, I don't necessarily see that either. I just don't. Now, I mean, I can see maybe some of the fit working on the basketball court. I think that would make more sense for Zach than it would for Vooch, so to say. And as far as Lavine, I do hear that Denver could be a dark horse candidate, especially using Michael Porter Jr.'s contract. I can also see the Magic getting involved in that, right? Using some of the contracts that they have, that they can facilitate some deals. So, we'll see what happens there. It just, teams can get desperate. And with the Magic suffering the injuries that they did in Paolo and Franz, maybe with Denver, with the season that Jokic is having, and with them just needing some extra firepower sometimes, maybe MPJ can be moved and maybe they pivot towards that. We'll see what happens there. I know the talk right now is the talk, but we'll see where it goes once that the trade deadline gets a little bit closer. All right, let's get into this next voicemail. This one's from Shay.
What's up, Hayes? Look, man, I know a lot of people have been talking about this pick and getting Cooper Flag or whoever the hell they looking at. Look, I'm looking at it like this. I understand people are looking for that. We get the top 10 pick and all whatever and all that other bullshit. That's cool, but let's think about it. When you look at teams that we've had like the Baby Bulls and all that shit, I know what you're going to say. Oh, we lucked up and got Derrick Rose and that's why we ended up there, brother. And that's true, but teams like the Baby Bulls and like respectable teams that we've had, like hell, even that and even some teams like that Toronto Raptors team a couple of years ago with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. They weren't necessarily the most talented, but at the end of the day, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry came into their own by winning games. Now don't get me wrong. I understand people say they want this pick, but think about it. We've tanked a couple of times in the past, and we ended up with the 7th overall pick. But that don't necessarily mean luck is going to necessarily turn in our favor if we have such a losing record. Now look, I get it. I know people want to get this pick, and it could be generational changing, but who knows? Maybe this pick could be just like a James Wiseman, where it does get to college, but doesn't necessarily translate to the NBA, or God forbid another injury can happen, and then we try to get a pick for nothing, or it doesn't really turn into our favor, and we end up getting the 7th pick like we did with Kobe White and Wendell Carter. Look, man, I'm just saying this. You have other young guys on your team like Dalen Terry, Marcus Bucelas, and Patrick Williams, and all those other guys, man, and I look at it like this. I'm not saying, win, and I know what people are going to say, you just want to make the playoffs where you get swept? Okay, cool, fine. You may get swept, but at the end of the day, remember something. The Boston Celtics got swept on their very first try with that new regime of Isaiah Thomas and Avery Bradley. Now, don't get me wrong, they got looked up and got Jason Tatum, but look at how many iterations they had to go through the team to get to that point where they are right now. And those teams were making the playoffs. Now, again, they looked up and got Brown and Tatum. That's true. They were 2 generational talents. But at the end of the day, you look at other guys that were a part of the team, like Marcus Smart, other guys that have been there on that team longer than Jason Tatum. They got better and better each year, and you know what that.
Shay, your comparisons get worse and worse, bro. Like sometimes it feels like you're just searching for, like, you don't have to find a comparison and say how you feel, brother. Like, because your comparisons are bad. Smart, for example, was on a team that was contending for a playoff spot with some actual talent on it. Like, you use these blanket teams to just say, look at these things. Like, yeah, and Boston got generational talents, as you said. Like, it's what? Shay, sometimes I feel like you be close to making a point, and then because you feel like you gotta back your point with some comparison, you actually hurt your point. And so, like, stop looking. I've been telling you this for 3 years, brother. Stop looking for comparisons. Just you watch enough basketball. Just give your thoughts, bro. And stop with the, when you think about it, stop, because once you do that, you start making comparisons. Just say, hey, I feel like the Bulls should contend for a playoff spot, because I think if they do, it develops the young players, we'll be good there, we'll have players that are used to winning and developing, and then when we add players to it, we've built the like, you can make all that without a comparison, because some of your you go to the utmost, and the Bulls ain't there. I love you, Shay. I love you. And actually, your original point before you got caught up in the weeds and making comparisons as far as competing, being 7, I said that earlier in the season, like, with the Bulls having a terrible defense, but actually competing for wins in these games, like, it is helping these young players develop. Look at Modest, right? Look at what Modest has done. Now, part of that is his own mentality, yes, but part of it is also that he's on a team that is trying to win these games. We don't necessarily have the talent to win some of these games, but we are trying to win these games, and thus the effort that he gives and the things that he's learning to do is, hey, let me help my team win. So, I agree with the point, but like I said, you got caught in the weeds of comparisons, bro. Hey, chill out. All right, let's get into the next voicemail, man. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. Looking at the way the team is built, I just don't see possibility of true success with guys like Billy as the head coach and some of the players on the team. Even though a lot of these guys will be good in different situations, it's just I don't think that AK right now is capable of making those winning situations possible. For instance, Josh Giddey, I think he's a good player. I think he's probably a starter on most teams. He's a guy 11, 12 triple-doubles a year. So I think the Bulls should trade him because you can't play a guy like him when you're down in the fourth quarter because he stopped and he's just someone any coach in the NBA can game plan against. Then there's nothing you can really do for him. I don't think you give him, a 4 or 5 year deal with him for 30 minutes per. And once again, it's not 100% his fault. It is his fault for not, training and getting himself ready to play defense in the NBA. That is on him. But, the fact that the Bulls traded for him and, didn't have real idea of this thing and didn't know how to maximize his strength and minimize his weaknesses, that's on the front office. And as for the Bulls, I will move on from Luke, not because he's a bad player, but because his value type is going to be. I keep seeing some other podcasters that Zach McKee interest is not as high as they would like it to be. And once again, I'm fine with that, not because he's a bad player, but because the one I thought I see is Billy Donovan, more so than him, for double standards. Like, when Zach was playing badly, he got benched. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. It was terrible. So when the bar was playing bad and Billy did bench him, and the double thing that went with it, that was rightfully mad. And you know what? I don't like to see it. So right now, I can think Bulls need to make some good moves and start thinking about next year. What's your opinion? Thanks.
No one's trading for Josh Giddey right now. I think when you look at it, and that's not to say that Josh Giddey is some horrible player, but I think when you look at the circumstances specifically, he was on a team that many people looked at as a contender to come out the West, that he was unplayable in their playoffs at their last playoff series. Then you go to a team that is a bad team, and you're not standing out on that team either. On top of being a restricted free agent at the end of this season, there's a lot of things going against Josh Giddey being able to be moved. So I don't think that that Josh Giddey being traded is necessarily a thing because of all those things going on, unless you're taking pennies on the dollar. And, that's what it comes down to. I think if anything, restricted free agency, maybe a sign and trade there if another team signs him to an offer sheet, but we'll see what happens there. But I do agree with you that it is on the front office to build a roster that overcomes certain players' weaknesses and helps their strengths. And we don't really have that for Giddey or for a lot of these other players. Also, we're also changing players' roles and how they play on offense a lot, which plays into that as well. So we sit in a place right now to where I think that this team is just in a place where they got to fix some things. And so we'll see what it goes there. But trading Josh Giddey, I just don't see that happening right now. But I guess we'll see. Where do things have happened? All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one's from Sherrod.
What up, big hey? Look, this Sherrod, man. Listen to you all the time. Love your show, bro. First time calling in, man. I'm calling to make my take on Dylan Caldwell, man. Man, dude is a monster. I mean, he's what we need. He's what we missing. 6'11", about 250. Real physical, real tough. Brings energy, brings size, athleticism, defensive minded. Great role player. He ain't no star player, but he brings what we're missing. Definitely what we need. Up and down running style, anchor of defense. He's a goon. And he brings that energy, man, that fight, that toughness, something we missing in our group. He can make them switches that Vooch can't. Like, he a young dude, but he definitely will bring something to us to help building what we trying to bring here in Chicago. And he brings that mindset that I ain't gonna bag down, that tough. You ain't coming in here with that easy stuff, going after all the blocks like Dylan Caldwell Cole. Like, he got something for you, man. And if y'all don't know, shit, watch him, but he got something.
Dylan Cardwell. Here's the thing, brother, is that the Bulls. Dylan Cardwell is not the type of player that you focus on targeting at this point in time. He's not even on most draft boards or in most mock drafts. He's a senior. He's probably going to be an undrafted rookie. Now, the Bulls have made moves for undrafted rookies before, but to say that Dylan Cardwell can anchor a defense, I can't get with you on that one, brother. He doesn't anchor a defense. Maybe in the NBA, no. And you really look at him and say he does have more size than Adama Sanogo, but Adama Sanogo is a way more skilled player. Now, I wouldn't be mad if the Bulls, as an undrafted free agent, signed Dylan Cardwell at all out of Auburn, for those that don't know. But he's not the type of player that you go into and you're like, we just got to target this guy. We got to make sure that we have this guy on the board. Like, it's not that. The Bulls need to have bigger focuses right now, I would say. But we'll see how that thing develops for this team as well. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, he is somebody that does bring some upside. But you look at those guys who make it to their senior year, and he's averaging 5 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists over that time, and he's averaging this season over a block. But it's just, yeah, I don't see it as like some big target that the Bulls need to do. But he's an interesting piece, especially if he does end up being an undrafted free agent. So keep a lookout for that. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.